Wir starten mit dem Input von Regina Elsner. Dr. Regina Elsner ist katholische Theologin und seit September 2017 wissenschaftliche Mitarbeiterin am Zentrum für Osteuropa und internationale Studien in Berlin. Und ja, Regina, du wirst uns einen Input geben zum Thema Russland. Russland, der Schutz vermeintlich christlicher Werte als Vorwand für illiberale Politik. Und ich freue mich auf deinen Beitrag.
Ja, vielen Dank. Vielen Dank für die Einladung und vielen Dank auch für die spontane Flexibilität, das Programm für mich zu ändern, weil ich nachher kurz mal aussteigen muss. Und ich bin sehr dankbar für die Möglichkeit, das so spontan zu ändern. I will also switch to English with my presentation because we were asked to do it preferentially in English, so I did so, and I hope it will help everyone to understand. So Russia has indeed become one of the leading actors who used the defense of religious freedom as a tool of repression in domestic as well as in international affairs. And to study Russia in this regard, which is my daily bread, means to read like an instruction manual how to participate in the international strategies for human rights as a renowned partner, as the Russian Orthodox Church and Russia has been for a long time, and then simultaneously to empty, to misuse, to pervert, I would say, the basic concepts like religious freedom, freedom of speech, and minority rights. Russia's war in Ukraine is a point in this story where we see how these concepts are used to justify war instead of a just peace, and how could it come that far. Russia, and especially the Russian Orthodox Church, gained their role in the defense of religious freedom to a large part because of the legacy as a repressed and persecuted church during the Soviet Union. So already during Cold War, Western actors paid special attention to the Russian Orthodox Church and granted it a certain moral capital due to its repressed situation in this time. But this appreciation of the Russian Orthodox Church remained in ecumenical and in human rights networks, ignoring, in fact, several important aspects. First, the Russian Orthodox Church was not anymore, after the breakdown of the Soviet Union, representative for the churches and religious communities in former Soviet countries like Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Georgia, or the Baltic states, but it claimed to be, in fact, representative for all these societies. Second, the leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church has been complicit with the Soviet leadership in the persecution of religious minorities, most prominently, for example, the Greek Catholic Church in Ukraine and in Belarus, and also Orthodox dissidents. The third misinterpretation in this role, this leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church from the Soviet times did not change or underwent a decommunization after the end of the Soviet Union. So the persons have been the same, in fact. And the fourth point, religious dissidents in the Soviet Union largely remained repressed dissidents within their church, also in post-Soviet Russia. So the repressed people, the repressed religious communities have also remained in our times. So thus the post-Soviet leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church appropriated the identity of a persecuted church without the authentic experience of a persecution, and it used it as moral capital in its relation to the West. The authority of this church in alliances for religious freedom largely draws on its claim to know what persecution really means, and to recognize destructive ideologies from afar. So we know what it means, so we, of course, recognize these destructive ideologies. And the church claims to somehow be a natural defender of true religious freedom because of this legacy to be a repressed church. And speaking directly in this regard, within the Russian Orthodox Church, we have an international actor in the system of advocating and protecting religious freedom who has an own long and very impressive story of fighting human rights. The fact of a church leadership complicit with an autocratic state is not a new development since 2012 at latest, but it has a distinct prehistory which roots lie in the Cold War. A second aspect, how Russia justifies illiberal politics with the help of human rights rhetoric, is the consolidation of a post-Soviet civilizational identity as the last defender of traditional and so redemptive somehow Christianity. In this worldview, Russia is opposing a collective West, which it describes as secular, liberal, hedonistic, persecuting Christians in the name of minority rights, and disseminating destructive ideologies like the gender ideology in order to commit genocide against traditional cultures. This is depicted, all these topics and problems are depicted as an existential threat, not only for Russia, but for humankind. Russia fulfills somehow a messianic role in an apocalyptic battle. These ideas build on deep anxieties of a society which for 7 decades heard about the will of fascist West to destroy it. And the only power able to stop this has been Russia during the Second World War. These ideas also build on the uncertainty of people who have no further experience of truth and accountability, both in Russia and in the West. Ukraine became a certain battlefield for this metaphysical fight, and you all have heard this word or this phrase during the speeches of the Patriarch of Moscow during the war in Ukraine. We have here a metaphysical fight. However, Russian civil society has experienced this battle long before. Individual and civil rights and freedoms have been repressed since 2012 at latest. And these repressions have been justified always with the defense of traditional Christian values. Spiritual, moral values became part of the national security strategy of Russia. NGOs and religious organizations like Jehovah's Witness or non-mainstream Muslim communities have been banned as extremists or as foreign agents. Domestic violence has been decriminalized. LGBTIQ people forced to invisibility. And everything with the legitimation of so-called Christian values. The values itself have remained extremely fluid, in fact, and vague. Ukraine's commitment to the European integration posed a particular danger for this salvatory civilizational project of Russia. For Russia, Ukraine and Belarus are integral parts of the Russian space. However, independent national policies made it impossible to push the same legal restrictions like in Russia. And I would make out 2 major strategies of influence of Russia in Ukraine before the war. This have been oligarchs and it has been the church. Since 1991, the Ukrainian Orthodox tried to detach from the Russian influence. However, even the global Christian community accepted the claim of the Russian Orthodox Church that Ukraine somehow belongs to the Russian Church. And until now, in fact, the majority of observers in the West perceive, and often write also, about Russian Orthodoxy in Ukraine, which is just wrong. This reluctance to acknowledge religious autonomy in Ukraine and in Belarus on the global stage, and the tendency to subscribe to the Russian view on Ukraine had a crucial impact on the ability of Russia to develop a narrative about the persecuted Christians in Ukraine. Since 2018 and the establishment of the Independent Orthodox Church of Ukraine, the Russian Orthodox Church, with the support of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, started a systematic reporting and monitoring of violent and rhetorical attacks on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They reported about the state persecutions against Christians on international level, the European Parliament, OSCE, and the UN. And this argument of persecuted Christians in Ukraine is an important part of the propaganda about Ukraine as a Nazi regime with satanic and genocidal tactics. At the same time, religious freedom is restricted extensively in all occupied by Russia territories. Priests and faithful are deported, temples destroyed, and sacred places humiliated. As a last point, I would like to underline that Russia has not invented new or original ways of misusing the freedom of religion in the ways Heiner Bielefeld and Bernd Hirschberger just listed them. I would even say that Russia learned a lot from Western populist allies. However, what seems to me the major difference to our Western ways of populist appropriation is the fact that in Russia, the institutionalized church, its leadership, its official structures support this appropriation in systematic ways. So far, for our societies in the West, the leadership of our churches are in fact an important opposition to populists, even in such countries like Italy or Hungary, or to some part maybe even Poland. The Russian Orthodox Church, however, is no marginal player both in Orthodoxy and in Christian ecumenism. And it seems that the straight commitment of this official church to a perverted concept of human rights and freedom of religion has been very attractive for Western conservative actors. So our Western populist actors receive with the Russian Orthodox Church the ecclesial authority they miss in their own churches. And to me, it seems that the war did not change this until now. Thank you very much.
Ganz herzlichen Dank, Regina Elsner, für den Beitrag, der in kurzer Zeit einfach wahnsinnig viel enthalten hat. Sowohl der historische Blick als auch die aktuelle Situation und die Verdrehung von Religionsfreiheit, der Blick auf die Ukraine und hinterher nochmal, ja, wirklich sehr pointiert der Blick auf den Unterschied, den eben die Situation in Russland auch ausmacht im Vergleich zu anderen Ländern, dass eben die russisch-orthodoxe Kirche eine ganz besondere Rolle hat. Und mir ist im Kopf hängen geblieben dein Satz, dass es sich um eine existenzielle Bedrohung im Prinzip für die Menschheit handelt, was passiert und was auch mit der Umdeutung von Religionsfreiheit im Land passiert. Danke